So, 25 years from now, if suppose whatever change Rera could bring in its present avatar, if this has to continue to grow, then it has to shed its status quo approach, because it's a very good act, and the act would be good if suppose the implementation of the act, also the rollout of the act across the country is also improved, which has not happened. So these are the deficient things which we have seen in the last 5 years. But while that happens, while we try and see how you people as the developers bodies across the country can use your advocacy skills to see that the rollout becomes uniform across the country. That will be one. Two, as I mentioned, that there would be certain gaps which having implemented for 5 years, I could notice. That would be also an area which, in fact, Naredco is also working on, to try and go to the ministry to say that time has come, post these 5 years, where we need to plug these gaps. I give you a simple example. You cannot talk about the act when you say that the act of the real estate sector is only holding the builder accountable. There are approving authorities called so-called competent authorities. They need to be also accountable. If you upfront come and say, I will complete this project in 3 years, obviously in those calculations there will be some 6 months set aside for various approvals that you need. If that 6 months becomes 6 years, then what happens? How can you be held accountable? By not holding that person accountable for his acts of commission or commission. Similarly, if there are financial institutions who have also put in money and were the first charge of the project for all the unsold flats, and if the project comes into a trouble, and you are looking for how do we take out this project from trouble and take it forward, not take it to insolvency, but take it towards completion, because I said Rera Act means completion of a project. The registration of a project under Rera is only for the purpose of completing the project. Okay, even if whatever difficulties come, it should be that the Rera authorities to try and bring in all the consultants, all the stakeholders to see we take it towards completion. But section 7 and 8 doesn't talk about the other people, the landowner, the financial institution, the person who has the first charge on the unsold flat. You cannot keep them out. And therefore you will have this hotspot that then the financial institution goes either to the surface or to the IBC. Okay, so I think these clarities need to be built in so that the act becomes complete in itself. If that happens, then I think these three, Rama that I mentioned, the transparency has to be taken to a different level altogether. Not only the mandated disclosures, but various other things that are there, try getting into sharing that information.
So may I add here that one other aspect that needs to be considered in Rera is also the accountability of the customer. While it is customer-centric, but it also needs to hold them accountable, which right now at the present state,
it does.
It does hold.
It does hold the customer.
No.
It absolutely holds the customer.
Absolutely.
There have been so many instances also where a quasi-judicial complaint or even maybe in a conciliation, the person who is complaining is the real estate agent or the developer. And he's saying that yes, this money which was supposed to come in is not coming in. So I don't think that that person is not held accountable.
My interpretation is that it is more from a grievance perspective rather than an accountability perspective.
Can you elaborate? What type of accountability would you further want?
Say, for example, there are projects which are coming up and there is a payment plan, and there is a certain aspect of the project which is being sold, and the customer has to make the payment, and there is a delay in the payment, or the customer stops paying. It does affect the developer's financial planning. So in that respect, while the customer gets a compensation for the delay in the project, there is grievance which is being taken in respect for the customer. But when it comes to the delayed payments of the customer, the effect and the impact that would have on the financial planning, something like that.
No, but the penalization of the customer is,
maybe I'm not completely in sync with what's happening today, but generally what used to happen is only 40% of the work that has to be completed for construction, if a builder did it, 60% came from the individual. Things have changed now because I think financial institutions and also Rera does not allow individuals to pay in advance more than what has been completed. It has to be completion stage, money will be paid. So sometimes there is a delay, so most developers take money from financial institutions to complete the construction. So generally it is not the
If I may just point out here, the construction stage also has been defined accordingly. To give you an example, you can collect up to the Maharashtra rules or the Maharashtra model form of agreement. You can collect up to 45% of the total consideration cost up to the plinth level.
right.
Now, plinth level by no stretch of imagination. If your flat is on the 15th floor, if by no stretch of imagination, your 45% construction completion.
No, I
What I am
understand.
saying is that the flow of money also has been built in such a manner that it should take care of the total construction. May not be the land cost or other things, which in the metro cities actually account for the bulk of the total cost of the project. Yeah, please complete.
And also when it comes to the financial closure, normally people prefer bulk disbursement. I mean, now Mona buys a flat, you buy a flat, Priya buys a flat, you will pay 10 lakhs, you give 15 lakhs, we pay 20 lakhs. That doesn't take care of the man's construction cost. So generally construction cost stages, financial institutions do lend. So even if it delays, it doesn't stop the developer from completing the project. Cost does not increase because the individuals are also made liable to pay interest on the amount that they have not paid.
At the same rate of interest.
At the same rate of interest, yeah.
That is the level playing field that is done.
Yeah.
And it is very rare that a compensation is imposed on a developer. It's only delayed interest that is imposed on a developer for delay in the project completion. But then bringing back to the point of information sharing, if suppose you have say 50 customers who are there, it will be not more than 5% who will be in that category. For whatever reason, maybe genuine difficulty or maybe he is actually delinquent. But then the remaining 95% are interested that the money is actually going to my project. If I look upon that project as my project, if I am part owner of the project, and therefore information sharing about also delinquents in the project will help tackle that delinquent. So you need not actually only rely on a grievance redressal mechanism or a conciliation mechanism to tackle it. This is how we also bring in good behavior around them. It's a question of how do you bring in good behavior, how do you bring in others, because majority of the people that I mentioned are putting in their life savings, are managing their funds in such a manner that they would not like to delay their payment unless you are delaying and not delivering it. So that is where I would look upon that, and I feel that there are sufficient things which are mentioned there which brings in accountability on the part of the government.
Just have one question connected to
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
I'm from Tamil Nadu. I just wanted to know the fee structure that you have formed for the Rera registration. Will it kind of be reduced for the agents to, more agents to participate in Rera? Because the main aspect of Rera is to make you accountable and to make you be there till the project is completed or till the deal is completed. So the agents have to, Mahi has done a great job. You registered thousands, but in Tamil Nadu, we have not been able to do that because there is no encouragement or any kind of carrot that the agent has to register and be a part of Rera. Could you kindly contribute something to the Tamil Nadu Rera increase in its membership so that,
Again, I am looking upon you to become the fighter. Mahi will actually go and sit with the chairman.
we need your support, sir. Please come to Chennai.
Don't of course go and tell him that Maharashtra government has done very good work, then your work will never be done. But then go and tell him that this is what is logical. I'm sure maybe 80% of your cases you will succeed.
Please come to Chennai, sir.
I will.
Any other questions? Yes. Because I have some questions for Mr.
Ma'am, you can ask first.
No, go ahead.
He has already asked one question. He has to wait till Mona.
Oh, my. Actually, I don't know how much this applies to other states. Real estate is a state subject, and I know from Maharashtra that there are these other acts also, like the NCOTA and the other acts. There's a consumer.
NCID.
Yeah, the consumer
Protection of
code. Yes.
investors.
So now what happens is that when Rera functions and these other acts are also in play, then the consumer has a choice to go to any of these forums. So does this create any kind of conflict of interest, or does this, will this
Not
going
conflict of
forward?
interest, but then certainly it creates little bit of confusion. Okay, and therefore it will be necessary, because this happens why? Because government function in silos. If I am in a particular department, I think I have done the best job and I have actually brought out an act. And the other department brings out another act and he thinks that he has done. Now, how the interplay would be is usually mixed out. And here, of course, there is further complicated thing is that it's a central act with rules at the state level, and there are also state acts which might come into conflict. So these are areas which, in fact, going back to Sarah's question, that how will we do the ironing out of these differences and improve upon them. These are the areas where, in fact, a think tank from you will have to say, I don't mind contributing whatever knowledge I have to see how we can approach the right authorities to make the right noises so that these things get straightened out.
Just a small question, going back to how you made the customer centricity work. In some of the Gurgaon properties, if you have made a late payment, when you are eligible for interest, but even if you have made a late payment, then you are not eligible to get any compensation on the late deliveries from developer. How do you address this in the Rera?
If you have made a late payment,
Suppose I have made a late payment, I have a construction late payment.
you are a buyer.
And buyer.
Yes.
And if I have made a late payment,
Yes.
then I am not eligible, even if I have made one, if I have just given one milestone of the payment, I am not eligible for any, compensation from the developer. Yes, the late
So there is
payment.
no compensation in the act, as I mentioned, but there is delayed interest. If suppose the payment is due from you on day X, then beyond that day, if you delay your payment, then at the same rate, at least you get penalized for a delayed interest. The person is supposed to be paying you the delayed interest.
I agree.
Not at the 24% which free Rera you used to charge. No. But then certainly at the same rate of delayed interest at which a developer gets penalized.
Some developers are writing this very smartly in their contract, that even if you have delayed your payment by one milestone, also the interest is valid. In that case, they are not liable for any compensation if the developer delays.
No, that is wrong. That is why, in fact, Supreme Court took cognizance of the various so-called agreement formats which are floating around in the country and has asked the ministry that though the section 13 of the Act has mandated the state governments to come out with the model form of agreement, the central government should say as to these are the things that must be there in agreement or these are the things that should not be there in an agreement. I don't think that should be there. The Maharashtra rule says that even for the first delayed payment, he has to pay delayed interest, and after 3, he can also be liable to be thrown out of the project. If suppose 3 such consecutive things happen that he does not pay, then the developer can also go to the extent of saying that enough is enough, I don't want it. Which is fair. Point is that this fairness is very much built into the system. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah.
So can we do some standardization of such important rules so that it will benefit the buyer across all the states of India?
So this whole thing was framed in this manner where there will be a central act. This was also deliberated whether it will be a central act or it will be a model Rera Act. In fact, I remember when I was housing secretary, at that time this deliberation was going on because most of the subjects that we're dealing with is land and other things which are state subjects. Therefore, the center should not get into this domain and should leave it to the states. The center should only guide them, as it has done in the case of Model Tenancy Act. The Model Tenancy Act does not automatically come into effect. It has to be adopted by the state government in whatever manner the center has laid down, then to go ahead. In this case, since the registration is a central thing under the Central Registration Act, therefore the government says that they are fully within their right to come up with a central act. Therefore, Rera is a central act. But then, the other things that are there, the stamp duties and other things which are taken at the state level, the Act said that it will be akin to what is the Transport Act, which is also a central act, but the rules are framed by the respective state government. And any act implementation takes place through what is called as the Parent Act and the subordinate legislation called the Rules and Regulations. So that is how this has been framed. But then yes, there have been these points which have been raised in various fora and was also brought out in the Supreme Court that the agreement is actually not being done in the spirit of Rera, and Supreme Court took cognizance. Similarly, there have been also citizens organization activist groups who have said that there have been dilution in the various concepts which should have been accepted in Rera regarding unfinished projects of the past. So there are many points which have been raised, but then they will have to be sorted out not by imposing something from the center. Then again you will have a problem that federalism is at stake. Okay. So this is a very difficult subject. As it is, we had West Bengal government not adopting the Central Act, and the Supreme Court had to tell them, still there is no Rera in place in West Bengal. So as soon as you try and do this, of trying to impose diktats from the center, you will have problems there. So it's a sensitive issue, but there needs to be tackled. There needs to be some level of uniformity. Differences in the culture in the state can be accounted for, but not in what is mentioned in the Parent Act and what is the major objective of the Act. That's right.
So I have a question here, small one.
So do we have an ombudsman for this? Do we have an ombudsman in the Rera?
Every Rera has the authority itself. In fact, it's a very unique authority. It plays three roles. One is the role as a registrar. It registers projects. So everything that comes with registration of projects or agents, that is one thing it does. Two, it does is it resolves grievances. So it's a grievance redressal quasi-judicial mechanism. And three, it is supposed to be an advisor on all urban development and housing matters to the respective state governments, which is rarely happening, but that is also mentioned in the Act. Then there is an appellate body which also acts against the orders that Rera has passed. Okay, and then of course one can go to the High Court and Supreme Court. So basically, ombudsman is for the problems that are there between the stakeholders. The Rera is supposed to be delivered. If the Rera is delivering something which is not in the interest of the industry or not in the interest of the stakeholders, there is an appellate tribunal to take charge of that, and it can pull up even the Rera for an order which is not in keeping with the provisions of the Act. So that provision is very much there, and I think that is adequate.
Thank you.
Yes?
Sir, I'm sure, sir, this conciliatory proceeding which you have initiated in pioneered in Maharashtra is something very unique. I thought maybe people from other states could benefit if you could talk about that a little, how it's progressed, maybe some.
Why don't we ask Dr.
Yeah, maybe the people who are also conciliators are, and they could also contribute. I think.
No, but as I mentioned to you that out of the treaty, all the treaties are important. You have to complete the project in time. You have to have transparency in whatever manner you can do. When you have to come out from that shell where you are refusing to part with any information, and you have come to the other extreme where all the information you feel should be shared. So that's how it is, that is transparency. And third, as I mentioned, over the years, last 4 or 5 decades, of the practice that has been followed, the way real estate sector has been managed by those wearing those old times not really gentlemen. So that has actually caused more damage to the perception that the people have about the players, important players in the sector. So that needs to change. So that will be trust. And that trust deficit, how do you remove that? So I think courts or quasi-judicial forum like Rera or the appellate tribunals are certainly forums which can bring, or the consumers may feel, psychologists may feel like I have a problem, if I go there, I will get it resolved. That's one. But I said that is not going to bridge the trust deficit. If you are talking about bridging the trust deficit, then you will have to bring them together to talk. And that was possible in this sector because earlier it lacked a level playing field. The developer has come here, he was out of house. The buyer was a poor buyer, he may not ever see the face of the developer. And therefore, every time he has a problem, he'll go to the project site and there will be someone, maybe different person, different time, who will give some sort of issue question answer. So that was the situation. We changed with this where all information is made available to the buyer and he is now empowered. And therefore, this level playing field I thought was the actual starting point where you can attain the conciliation. So conciliation was something where you made two warring parties, initially warring, come together, and there are these conciliators who are the facilitators.